Hey, what's going on guys? Nick here with HN Entertainment's recap and review for the Game of Thrones Season 8 finale. So obviously, spoilers ahead. I'm gonna kind of go and just discuss openly what happens in the episode and my thoughts on the whole series now that it's over. So you've been warned. The episode opens up right where we left off last week after King's Landing was burned to ashes by Daenerys and Drogon. And this episode was very much the swan song to the entire series. It was quiet, it was all about characters, decisions. If you guys have been paying attention to leaks that have happened, pretty much everything that was in the leak was true. You know, Bran becomes the king, Daenerys is killed by Jon Snow, Jon goes back to the Night's Watch, Sansa becomes the Queen of the North, Tyrion becomes the Hand of the King, and so on. There's a bunch of big twists and reveals this episode that I think most people weren't really expecting, although I think there was definitely precedence for a lot of it happening. So Game of Thrones has always been about kind of, I guess, going against the grain of what people expect from a fantasy show like this, but also really showing us the worst and best of people. And I think that Daenerys being killed by Jon was something that had to happen. You know, as you watch the show, I think a lot of people were rooting for Dany to become the queen and to actually rule over the realm, Seven Kingdoms and everything. But as the show progressed and as things got closer to the finale, and especially after last week's episode, I think she showed her true colors. And while I've been very mixed about how they've handled certain things and everything, I have actually done some more thinking about it and kind of processing what's happening this final season. And a lot of Dany's change was kind of telegraphed throughout the show, and it always felt like she wasn't going to be fit to rule, you know, over the Seven Kingdoms. So I'm actually glad that she's not going to be the queen, and the way that they handled her ending, I think, was the best possible way they could have done it. And also the idea that Bran Stark is named the ruler of the Seven Kingdoms, well, the Six Kingdoms now, since the North is remaining independent, was also a very interesting choice. It's something that some people expected, but also a lot of people didn't expect. And I do like the fact that they are going to go forward without having, you know, people in succession and houses just continuously rule for years until somebody else has a better claim to the throne. It's just going to have all the leaders kind of reconvene and choose a new ruler when things are moving forward. Overall, you know, this episode was very much like the end of Return of the King, where you have like a million different endings and they just wrap up everything as neatly and nicely as possible, giving every character the ending that they sort of deserved from the beginning. If you kind of look at it and you just go back, analyze everything that's happened within the character over the entire show, you'll kind of see that everything was leading to this. You know, Arya going off being an explorer, adventuring and going past Westeros into uncharted territory, Sansa becoming the Queen of the North and ruling over that independent kingdom, and Jon going back to the Night's Watch. I always kind of figured he would. I never once thought that Jon would take up the Iron Throne or rule over the Seven Kingdoms or anything. It just didn't really make sense for his character. He never wanted it really, and he was always kind of at home with the Night's Watch. You know, that sense of brotherhood and duty. That's always been Jon's motto, so it makes sense that he goes back to the Wall and reunites with Tormund and Ghost. Another thing that I was kind of surprised by was the fact that Drogon escapes, but the cool thing is they kind of tease that Bran is going to warg into Drogon and help find him so they can actually bring him back to King's Landing and get him under control. So what did you guys think of the episode? 1, did you like it as a season finale just to season 8 or whatever? And 2, did you think that they wrapped up everything from the entire show? Do you think this was the right ending that should have happened? What are your thoughts on the character and narrative choices? And what are your thoughts on the way that everyone's story kind of ended up? Personally, like I said, I was very mixed on the execution most of the season, but I actually do like this episode and the way that things ended. I think they did as best a job they could have done. I mean, sure, it could have been better and they could have done other things, but from what they were given and what it was set up and everything, I think that they did very well on the execution this time around. But like I said, post your thoughts down in the comments below. It is sad to know that there's not going to be a new episode of Game of Thrones next week. This is it. Now we have to look forward to the prequel called The Long Night, which is going to chronicle the events of the first encounter between the Seven Kingdoms and the White Walkers. So for more on Game of Thrones and everything pop culture, be sure to subscribe to HN Entertainment.